I used to think love was a rhythm you could learn if you listened carefully. Our mornings had a beat, kettle on, window cracked for the sound of the street, 2 mugs on the counter. Mine with the chip shaped like a comma, his pristine, coffee measured by feel, not spoons. He liked cinnamon, I pretended not to, then found myself craving the warmth it left in the throat. We lived on the 3rd floor of a building that leaned slightly to the west, so the light always looked like late afternoon by the time it reached our kitchen table. He wore soft t-shirts and left receipts folded into little tents beside the fruit bowl. I ironed his shirts before interviews and put a note in his jacket pocket that said, "Shoulders back." We were engaged by the river in March, the wind so cold the ring wouldn't go on properly at first. He laughed and pressed my hand between his palms to warm it. "We're a team," he said, and I believed him. Teams, I thought, share the ball, the bench, the breath. My best friend, Maya, had been there since freshman year of college, same dorm. Same ramen, same habit of turning our phones face down when we talked like we were saving the conversation from being interrupted by gravity. She was clever in the way that makes you better without making you smaller. The 3 of us formed a cheerful geometry, him, Daniel, with his tidy calendars, me with my color-coded lists, Maya with her stories that always found the exact right ending. She was my emergency contact for years. When my mother had her knee surgery, she sent food to the recovery ward with a note. "I'll bring the jokes when you need them." When we got engaged, she cried harder than my sister and then immediately asked about the date, the dress, the flowers. We thought we were building the same future. That was the first mistake, assuming futures overlap just because you can see them from the same porch. We planned a small wedding because the idea of microphones made me itchy. A backyard ceremony at Daniel's aunt's house, string lights, bread from the bakery on green, the band that plays on Thursdays at the bar with the crooked pool table. We picked a date in late September when the air smells like apples and road dust. My Pinterest boards multiplied like rabbits. We sat on the rug with catalogs and Maya on the couch, tossing jokes at us like confetti. Daniel would squeeze my knee when the budgets made my face do math in the wrong direction. We kept it simple. It felt like a word you could balance on your tongue without breaking it. The first hairline crack was so small I only remember it because everything after came with echoes. We were at brunch in July, the kind that takes an hour to get a table for and tastes like it should have been free. Maya excused herself to the bathroom. Daniel checked his phone. A smile, quick, private. He typed quickly, the way he does when he's making a joke he's proud of. "Who's that?" I asked, light. He flipped the phone face down, still smiling. "Greg sent a meme," he said, and we both knew it was plausible enough to leave alone. When Maya returned, they laughed at something before they sat. I couldn't hear it under the air conditioner's hum, but there was the shape of a shared line. Not a punchline, a line. That week, he started putting his phone on Do Not Disturb at dinner. "So we can be present," he said, and I nodded like a person who has learned you get points for agreeing with healthy things. Maya began sending me screenshots of dresses in the late evenings with captions like, "Not this, but the vibe." I started falling asleep before the kettle finished boiling. There were other tiny misalignments. Maya stopped saying Daniel's name. She'd say, "Your guy or the fiancé," like the words carried heat. She began to cancel our weekday walks with reasons that were true in the way that happens when a lie is worse. Client call ran over. My head is a balloon animal. 20 minutes turned into 50. I started keeping a list, not of the cancellations, exactly, but of the feeling that arrived after them, a soft thud, like something small hitting the floor in a room you were sure was empty. Our group chat, me, Maya, and Daniel, slowed down. The dumb memes dried up. Inside jokes stopped having dates. When we did send things, they were safe, pictures of a stray dog on the corner of 5th, a link to an article about the best grocery store olives, a photo of a cloud shaped like a hand. The chat became a museum of surfaces. I scrolled back to February once and found a conversation about a movie we watched together and argued about in the kitchen until 2 in the morning. We had been so charming in our certainty then. It felt like reading the texts of strangers wearing our names. If you ask people how betrayal starts, they'll tell you about lipstick on collars or the smell of someone else's shampoo. Mine started in an Excel spreadsheet. I manage vendor payment schedules for a logistics company, which means my brain is tuned to regularity. I notice when a number doesn't sit right with its neighbors. One night, Daniel fell asleep on the couch watching a documentary about mountaineers who forgot to come down. His phone buzzed on the coffee table once, then again. I don't look through people's phones. It's not a moral objection, it's that I don't like the person I become in that posture, shoulders hunched, thumb greedy. But the buzzes came like a metronome, and something in me said, "Count." I didn't touch the phone. I went to my laptop and opened the shared calendar we used for wedding planning. 2 new color blocks had appeared on Daniel's Monday: client drinks, 7 p.m., Pender. He hates working out late, it makes him wired. I opened my own calendar where I'd blocked call florist. I sent him a message, "Hey, are you free to swing by Maya's after drinks?" She found a new centerpiece idea. No response. I pictured him with the mountaineers, oxygen thin, eyes on a horizon no one else could see. The next afternoon, I dropped a set of rental contracts at the event space and decided to walk home. It was one of those sweaty, generous days when the city smells like a bakery and a mechanic. I cut down Palmer Street and passed Maya's building. There was Daniel's jacket, navy, the one with the suede elbows, over Maya's balcony chair like it had grown there. It could have been anyone's. It was his. I stood on the sidewalk longer than anyone needs to stand on a sidewalk. A neighbor waved. I waved back, like an actor taking direction from a distant voice: smile, hold, exit. In stories like this, there's often a scene where someone calls out the other two in the rain, with lightning. I do not like weather as metaphor. I went home and put the kettle on. I poured the water and forgot the tea. When Daniel came in, I asked, "How was Pender?" People like to imagine they'd explode, that the confrontation would be operatic, that plates would shatter, that lines would be delivered with the kind of timing that becomes legend. I made a plan. If betrayal is a knot, you can tug indiscriminately and tighten it, or you can find the loose end. I called Maya the next morning and asked if she could meet me at the thrift store on 9th where we used to try on old jackets and pretend to be other women. She said she had a dentist appointment. An hour later, she posted a photo from a coffee shop across town: a cappuccino, a croissant, a caption, "Fuel." The cup had a lipstick mark that was not her color. I began to collect small, boring facts. I am good at small, boring facts. It is how I stay calm. I printed our florist deposit receipt and realized the timestamp, 9:43 p.m., was the same minute Daniel had texted me, "Headed home now, 3 Fridays ago." I looked at Maya's Instagram and found a boomerang of 2 tumblers clinking on a table with a plant I recognized. Daniel's trailing pothos, the one he keeps on his desk at work and calls the intern. She'd captioned it with a leaf emoji and a spark. I checked Uber. Daniel had a trip to Maya's neighborhood at 11:28 p.m. on a night he'd said he was at a coworker's birthday far uptown. The receipt was in our shared email because he'd forwarded it to me once to ask if we could expense something. I told myself a better story, a surprise. A coordinated joy. A secret party. I like logic so much I let it pet me. I asked our friend group what they were doing on Saturday and got 4 variations of busy. With too many exclamation marks and nothing between them. I texted Daniel's sister, who adores me in the way a person adores whoever restores quiet to a family chat. "Brunch this weekend?" I asked. She responded, "We're slammed, rain check?" And then sent a gif of a cat falling off a table. Her husband, who is incapable of subtext, sent me a separate message, "Everything okay?" I stared at it for a long time and put my phone face down like it had become a witness. I didn't tell my mother. She would have arrived with a casserole and a bolt cutter. There was a night, Thursday, when Daniel said he had a late meeting and I said I'd meet Maya for a walk. We never got to the walk. I walked alone. I passed the river and the couples making promises they didn't understand yet. I counted the lights in the buildings and thought about how many rooms were laughing, how many were losing. At 9, I stood outside Maya's building and watched Daniel arrive. I watched him look up at her window like a person knocks with their eyes. I watched the elevator swallow him. I didn't go upstairs. I went home and put the ring in a glass on the windowsill because it looked too formal on the table. There is a cruelty in timing even cowards understand. They didn't make me find them. They let me hear it. My phone lit up with our group chat at 10:32 p.m. Maya sent a picture of a wedding arch covered in eucalyptus and white roses. "Thoughts?" she wrote. Daniel typed, then stopped, then typed. "Beautiful," he wrote. "For your venue or ours?" I stared at ours as long as it took for my brain to split it into pieces. The vowel he used for me, the consonant he used for her, the glue that made both plausible. I have always thought of rage as a loud color. Mine arrived as grayscale. Everything went quiet and precise. I opened my laptop and wrote a list titled "Kindness to my future self." I wrote, "Stop guessing. Ask for the truth. Do not argue with performances. Ask for facts. Do not apologize for noticing. Take your time. You are not on their schedule. Decide what ending you can live with. Build toward that. Then I slept for 5 hours, woke up at 6, and made coffee without looking at the mugs. At 7, I sent 2 messages. To Daniel, please be home by 6 p.m. today. I need to talk with you about something important. No surprises. To Maya, I'm stopping by at 5. I'll text when I'm downstairs. The day at work moved like molasses that had given up. I approved invoices and ate an apple that tasted like styrofoam. My boss asked if I had plans for the weekend and I said, laundry, which is the truth people use when the truth would burn down the office. At 4:30, I left. I texted Maya at 4:58, here. She buzzed me in without words. Her apartment smelled like grapefruit and the candle I had given her in February. She wore sweatpants and my college sweatshirt. She looked like a version of the past I was about to retire. We stood there for a moment like we were taking attendance. I think you know why I'm here, I said. Her face went through 3 expressions like slides. Denial, then the quick gathering of a story, then something like relief that made me angrier than anything else had. It's not what you think, she began, which is the opening line of every confession that wants to be forgiven before it is told. I think you're seeing him, I said. I kept my voice in the register I use when I read numbers aloud. I think it started as a late conversation that got convenient. I think you used the parts of me you know to hide it. And I think you're about to tell me you didn't want to hurt me. She flinched. It was complicated, she said. It was lazy, I said, and surprised myself with the accuracy. She started to cry, which cost me nothing and cost me everything. It happened after the engagement, she said. We were drunk after the planning meeting at the Pine. You left early because you had that early meeting. He walked me home. We talked about, it doesn't matter. It was once, then it was twice. It felt, she stopped. We thought we could stop. We? I said, because the grammar matters when you're divvying up guilt. She nodded, pulled the sleeves over her hands like a teenager apologizing to a parent. I tried to tell you 100 times, she said. I made lists. I couldn't. I didn't want to be the person who ruined your life. You are not that powerful, I said. You ruined one version of it. There was a pause in which I realized I had imagined this conversation many times but had never imagined it without Daniel. I wanted to ask her if his laugh sounded different in the dark. I wanted to ask her if he called her the same names he called me. I wanted to ask her if she had ever tried to stop loving someone and found that the love simply changed rooms and waited. Instead, I asked, who else knows? Her mouth opened, closed. Please, she said, like asking me not to ask was a gift to both of us. Who else knows? I held the silence like a wire. She said 3 names like they cost her teeth. A friend from work, Daniel's sister, and, this one took 2 breaths, her brother. I told him because I needed someone to tell me I wasn't a monster, she said, and I watched her do the math that turns confession into absolution. I did not offer her the answer. When were you going to tell me? I asked. She had the grace to say, probably never. I nodded. Thank you for the truth, I said, and I meant it the way you mean thank you to a nurse taking blood. Can we? She began. No, I said, and it was not a performance. It was a boundary arriving finally as itself. I'm going to ask you not to contact me for a while. I need to be a person who is not triangulated. She reached for me and stopped when she saw my face. You were my best friend, she said, as if the past could make a small fire in the present. Once, I said, I left without looking back because it felt too cinematic. Daniel was on the couch when I opened our door at 5:58. He stood up, hands open, already a small speech forming in his mouth like a warning. I put my bag down, took off my shoes, put them side by side because leaving them messily would have felt like a lie. I talked to Maya, I said. He closed his eyes the way people do when the sudden sunlight owns the room. Okay, he said. I'm going to say this once, I said. I want the facts, not your narrative, not your version where it's about stress or timelines or me being distracted by spreadsheets. When, where, how often? Did you tell anyone? Do you want to be with her? You will not mention my kindness to me while you answer. He sat. I stayed standing because sitting felt like collaboration. He told me the facts like a child at show and tell. It started in spring. It happened at her apartment. Twice a month at first, then once a week. It happened after the planning sessions, the nights I said, I'm going to organize the vendor list, I'll send you the summary. It happened because it was easy and because the 3 of us had built a stage for honesty that they used to rehearse a lie. Who knew? I asked, though I had a list. He named the same 3, plus 1 more, his coworker, the one who sends mass emails with too many commas. He told me I was playing with fire, Daniel said. Like credit belonged there. He said if I was going to tell you, I should do it before September. Were you going to? I asked. I thought about it, he said, and I saw everything piece about cowardice flash behind his eyes like a screensaver. Do you want to be with her? I asked. He took too long to answer and that was the answer. I don't know, he said, then, hurriedly, I know I don't want to lose you. You already did, I said, and the gentleness in my voice startled both of us. I love you, he said, reflex as prayer. Love is an action, I said. And your calendar shows a different verb. He looked small suddenly, like a person who has been found under a table. Can we fix this? He asked. Can we go to therapy? We can push the date. Whatever you say. I'll sell the tickets for Europe. I'll tell my sister. You'll do what you're told, I said, because you're good at performing obedience when you're caught. I softened it with a hand on the back of the chair because I am not interested in seeing people as only their worst angle. I'm not going to scream. I'm not going to break plates. I'm going to be boring in the way that saves me. I had already made a list for this too. That's the thing about being a person who loves lists, you always have one ready for the life you didn't ask for. Here's what happens next, I said. I'm calling off the wedding. I will inform your family and mine with a message I will share with you before I send it. I'm pausing all deposits today, we'll deal with refunds next week. I will pack a bag and stay with my sister for a while. You will not contact me except about logistics. You will inform Maya that I've asked her not to contact me. You will tell the 3 people who knew that I know, so no one has to run interference. You will not make me be the adult in rooms you've already collapsed. He nodded like he'd been rehearsing that motion. You will also call your therapist, I said. And keep the appointment. If you don't have one, you will get one. Today. He swallowed. Okay. Lastly, I said, you will not ask me what forgiveness looks like. Because you don't get to set the syllabus. Something softened in his face. Maybe the relief of being told what to do. Maybe the grief of realizing the person who loved you more than anyone you'd ever met is now speaking to you as if you're a colleague who's misfiled something important. He packed a bag too. He said he'd go to his sister's. He stood in the doorway longer than was polite and less than was tragic. I'm sorry, he said, the phrase you hand a cashier when you can't find your wallet. I believe you, I said, and watched it land on him like a blanket and a stone. I sent the messages that night. My note to our families was simple. Hi all, I'm calling off the wedding. I found out Daniel has been seeing someone else. I'm okay. I'd appreciate privacy while we handle logistics. Please direct questions to me by text, I'll respond when I can. Thank you for understanding. I didn't add a paragraph about timing or blame. I didn't add this is not up for discussion. Though I wanted to. People replied with many versions of here if you need. A few asked for details I did not supply. Daniel's sister sent a voice note of her crying and saying, I love you, which I listened to twice and then deleted. Maya wrote one long email that said nothing new and used the phrase we didn't mean to 3 times. I did not respond. She sent a second, shorter one. Subject line, I know. Body, I will not contact you. I'm sorry. It was the only gift she could give me then. The next week was devoted to housekeeping in the most literal sense. I changed the password on the registry and deleted the whole thing. I called vendors and said, plans changed, and listened to 6 different tones of sympathy. The florist kept our deposit and sent me a box of white roses anyway, with a handwritten note, for endings that were beginnings first. I gave them to the nurse on my floor when my sister and I brought my mother to a follow-up appointment. She looked surprised and then pleased. Like kindness had arrived out of order. I looked for an apartment with south-facing windows and a reasonable landlord. I moved my favorite books first, then my kettle, then the chipped mug, which I held in both hands like it might change its mind. I bought 2 new towels even though the old ones were perfectly fine. I slept badly for 3 weeks and then slept one night so well I woke up suspicious. There is a temptation to make a new life loudly, to post a picture of keys and captions about resilience. I resisted it. My resilience was quiet. It looked like knowing where my mixing bowl was without asking anyone. It looked like taking long walks at the time of day we used to cook together and remembering that hunger is a feeling you can address directly. It looked like therapy on Wednesdays at 6 p.m., where I spoke in paragraphs and sometimes in silence and learned that both counted as talking. It looked like learning that betrayal is not a puzzle you solve by finding the exact right piece. It's a weather system. You build a roof. People took sides in ways that embarrassed them later. The men in our group told me in private that they'd always thought something was off, which is what men say when they want credit for an intuition they did not act on. A woman we both knew sent me a message that said, I didn't know how to tell you, which I believed and didn't. My sister mailed me a sweatshirt that said, "Exit Strategist," which made me laugh and then cry and then wear it to the grocery store like armor. Daniel tried once more, a message, a long one, typed like a person running. He said he missed the morning I hummed in the kitchen, the way I corrected his grammar gently, the feeling of me falling asleep on the couch with a book on my chest. He said he'd broken things before but never something that had a name like a person. He said he wanted to make it right. He said he'd end it with Maya, that he had, that he would, that he wanted me to see him do it. I stared at the message until the screen dimmed. Then I wrote back, "Please respect my boundary. Logistics only." I blocked him for 48 hours and unblocked him because I am trying not to live in absolutes. Months later, Maya and I ran into each other at the hardware store. I was buying a plant hook for the ceiling, she was buying tiny nails that looked like jewelry. We stood in the aisle like tourists lost in a familiar city. She looked at my basket. "You always wanted plants you could hang," she said. "You said it made rooms look like they were thinking." "You always remembered the exact sentence," I said, and it almost undid me. "I hope you're well," I said, "because it costs me nothing to wish the people who hurt me a weather that is survivable." "I'm sorry," she said again, like the word had grown a new edge she hadn't noticed before. "I know," I said, and meant it in the way you mean I know to a story you've finished reading. I didn't hate them. Hate would have asked to live with me. I let them go the way I've learned to let small, precise griefs go, not with speeches, but with practice. I cooked for one and learned I like the end piece of the bread best. I started running in the mornings, badly, in a way that made my chest feel like a door I was finally opening. I made a list of things I'd quit pretending to enjoy: red velvet cake, networking events, podcasts where men explain other men. I made another list of things I'd quit pretending to dislike: solo movies, texting first, Fridays. I took the ring to a jeweler and asked them to reset the stone into a necklace. I wear it on days I need reminding that value is not ruined by context, it is simply honest about its history. If there's a moral, it is small and heavy and not clever enough to be a caption. It is this: silence is not neutral. The people who knew and chose the quiet hurt me differently than the two who did the obvious harm. Their silence was a hedge they took out against discomfort. It paid dividends for them and collected interest on my life. I can forgive the two because they were clumsy in a way I recognize. I have been clumsy with other people's hearts before. What I will not do again is accept a silence that masquerades as kindness. I will ask better questions. I will tolerate fewer half-answers disguised as timing. Sometimes, on Sundays, I make the cinnamon coffee the way he liked it and drink it the way I do, slowly, with the window open. The light still leans to the west. The city still smells like a baker and a mechanic. I still iron my own shirts for interviews, and when I slide a note into my pocket, it says, "Shoulders back," but under that I've added, "Face forward." I listen to the kettle. I listen to the door. I listen to myself. In the end, I did not burn the house down. I turned off the stove, opened the windows, and walked out, taking my own oxygen with me. That felt less like an ending and more like an answer. And when people ask, as they sometimes do, if I do anything differently, I say, yes. I would have believed the smallest version of the truth the first time it knocked. Then I hang the plant, water it just enough, and let it learn the room the way I did, quietly, relentlessly, toward the light.